back, everyone. This is Blerd's Eyeview. I'm your host, Chris G. Thank you for tuning in. We got some great things coming up. We got a lot to talk about. We have the Disney Marvel. They've been pretty busy for this past week, maybe past 2 weeks, actually. And the stuff they have coming up for their slots for their TV film division. And we got some stuff going on with DC and stuff that's going on with them. We'll talk about them in a little bit. A lot of stuff going on with Diamond Distribution, which deals with a lot of the comics and books that goes to all the brick and mortar stores. So they'll be talking about starting back in mid-May. We got a lot of that stuff going on. But if you haven't been paying attention through this whole spiel, if I've been talking a little fast for you, I didn't notice. If you did notice, I mentioned we, and that's because I got a guest host on there. Hopefully, he's going to be my co-host. Introduce yourself.
Looking forward to it. I am Darius. He is the more knowledgeable one on the comic book. I'm more the comic relief. Picture me as the Black Wade Wilson. I'm here to provide what I can, but also to allow him to shine his greatness. Because I'm happy to be here. I'm not gonna lie, it's been a crazy month. It's been a crazy week.
Yeah.
Just the fact that I'm able to do something besides, work and watch old reruns of shows and movies and the no-line sports has been dead. With that being said, I also am so excited because Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. coming on, and I told my family, I'm going on Do Not Disturb. I'm going to lock myself in the basement. I'm putting a brick wall up and mortars, and I'm going to hunker down and watch the entire season. Hopefully without missing one, because I don't like watching it on, not being able to watch it when it comes out. I want to watch it as it's fresh, as is intended, because going back and trying to catch up is horrible for me.
Right. So, I'm glad you mentioned that. We're going to give it a pause. 3. So, you mentioned Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., new season starting up in May. So, it's coming up real soon. It's actually starting up in May. I think it's the end of May.
May 27th.
May 27th. I am looking forward to it. If you have not watched the last season, everybody, I suggest highly check this thing out. We get a lot of stuff. If you haven't watched it, spoiler alert, because it's been over a year. We get Coulson. Yeah,
6 months. There's no spoiler alert anymore.
Exactly.
It's on Netflix. I advise you to go watch it right now. Season 1. All the way up until where they stopped at before you got time.
Right.
You got time to go back and stuff. I went back and watched the first pilot episode and forgot how green everything was. Daisy, you had my guy Michael, who ended up being, I cannot. Oh my God, it's killing me. It's escaped me. Oh my God.
You talking about J. August Richards' character? Yeah, okay, Gunn. I know him as Gunn. I know him as Gunn but if you've really been paying attention to the show, he actually plays Deathlock. He becomes Deathlock later on in the show.
Yeah.
And he shows up again, but I really wanted him to flesh out. Well, I really wanted them to flesh that out more. God, he's actually a character I thought about cosplaying because it was such a cool costume, and it wasn't it wasn't as gory as it wasn't overly done. It was just right. It was just right. So here's a little related note about the upcoming season of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. We get a call back to Agent Carter. Yeah, we get a call back to Agent Carter.
Good crossover. I can't wait to see that.
Right. We're not sure if we're going to see Peggy herself just yet, but we do get to see Agent Sousa.
That's my guy, Sousa.
Mm-hmm.
He was a badass, man. He had that one little crutch and he was out there killing stuff.
Yeah, and he was still handling his business. I'm like, he didn't want anybody feeling sorry for him.
And that's why I like this character, because you could tell he had a deficiency, but he didn't want to let it define him. He wanted to be pretty normal. He was kicking ass and taking names. He was shooting people all over the place. But he was a pure guy.
Yeah.
You could tell the character wasn't going to be. There were some characters on that show I could tell, like, oh yeah, they're crossing over. One, they're going to touch the dark side a little bit here and there, but to stay pure of heart through the whole thing. And to me, I'm kind of sad they, ended him like they did, but then the whole show ended, so it wasn't like we were going to see him anymore.
Right.
But the story was pretty good.
Yeah, I think the best part about that show about Agent Carter was in Agent Sousa and Agent Carter's relationship, so to speak, was how they treated him. They treated her pretty viciously because it was that time. It was the 1920s, and she wasn't a woman that was so quote unquote in her place. And they treated him pretty much in that same pool because he was, he was crippled, but he was very able, just like Agent Carter. He was just as able. And like even then he was still worried about her, but she was like, "No, I got this." And then he was like, "Well, I got it too." So they had a good dynamic. I really wanted, what was it, 2 seasons? Oh, I wanted them to go for more. The way they ended Agent Carter, they left you open to have the Black Widow program for the Red Room and everything. I'm like, oh God, we could have seen so much more.
And that show had so much potential because when they put it on, it was a time that you didn't have Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. on. So they were their own entity because they didn't show anything other than, you had Howard Stark and Jarvis.
Right.
But it was also a show that could have stood on its own had they given it a chance. Because I think the second season, and this is not popular, but the second season wasn't that great. And I think it's because they knew they weren't coming back for a third, or they might have felt early on in recording, so they didn't put first season. Oh man, first season.
Yeah, because it was so highly expected and everything else. And I think a lot of what happened with, and this is kind of like the same thing that happened with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., is the first season right out the park. Second season, just as strong. They started faltering around their third and fourth season, and it was touch and go for a minute there, and then the fifth season came along and it really picked up.
The third and fourth season, I think they were trying to the movies were coming out.
Yeah, right.
You had Captain America, then you had Winter Soldier coming, so it was like they weren't trying to incorporate the movies and try to stand alone, but fans were clamoring for some kind of, what were they doing while this was going on?
Yeah, like, exactly.
The part that they play,
I think,
is there, so we got to know Coulson is still a part of being around Nick Fury, so he has to know something. So,
right.
They tried, they were ambitious.
They were.
I mean, their storytelling was not over the top, but for it to be a small show and not being able to have that cinematic effect, and for it to only be an hour, there's only so much you can do in an hour.
Yeah.
And being able to tell that story like the movie told in 2 or 3, it didn't quite work out because they were trying to do it week to week. So it faltered a little bit and got slow and kind of watered down and drawn out. But once they got away from that, we went back to, hey, we stand alone, our own characters, our own story arcs, our own way to go back to it. Like season 1 and 2, it was phenomenal.
Yeah, I think it was a fine line for them to walk because even I know him as Nick Fury now. Even Sam Jackson was saying that, hey, he wanted to be on the show. He would do it for free.
There's a lot of characters that wanted to be on the show.
Yeah.
But because of the movies and the contracts and everything, they couldn't.
And he was probably next to the actress that plays Maria Hill, they were him and her, they were the only 2 characters that made it over on the show. And I think he was on there twice, and she was on there once. And it was like, I think the only true crossover they had was beyond that was, I think it was season 3 or 4, where one of the doctors that was during the Inhuman saga. It was during that, and when they were doing all the experimentation and everything, and one of the doctors that was on there said he had to go because they were going to catch up to him. And he left. Well, where he was leaving to go to was where it picks up in Avengers Age of Ultron. And that's where it picked up at. Because, I think at the end of that season, that's when Nick Fury shows up. And that's when you realize they called out the Avenger Initiative. And that's when you be like, oh, they about to show up. Well, they didn't show up on the show. They showed up in Age of Ultron. And that's where the Doctor shows up. And he was probably in the film for 10 minutes. If that.
Lady Sif showed up.
Yeah, Lady Sif. That's right.
That episode was amazing because
that brought in a lot of viewers too.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
Because everybody wondered what the heck happened to Lady Sif. I was like,
she wasn't in any of the other movies.
No, and she wasn't. And that's what upset a lot of people. It was like, what happened? That was the downside to branching over to the films. That was the downside to those characters in the Warriors 3. Like, all of them died, like in Thor Ragnarok. It was crazy. I was like, wait a minute, you killed all three of the I'm like, they were kind of like the comic relief almost.
At once.
Yeah.
Like, one after the other, here and there. In the beginning of the movie, they killed all three.
I'm like, Volstagg didn't even get like a line out. I was like, Hela came out and just killed him flat out before he even had a chance to say anything. So it just kind of destroyed at least those secondary characters that I seen as almost the comic relief. Those were great characters. Those were really great characters. I really wish they had a spoke on them more, but it was a lot. But speaking of Thor, Chris Hemsworth, he's currently has a movie on Netflix, which I plan on checking out myself. But he's
hearing good things about it.
Yeah, me too. He is talking about his script for Thor: Love and Thunder. He said it's probably the best script he's ever seen, considering involving this character. I always wrecked it, Taiki Waititi. I always wrecked that dude's name, and I hope I got it right. But he's becoming a triple threat in Hollywood because not only is he directing films, he's starring in them. He's writing it. He's helping them produce, and he's writing and directing. He's like, what we do in the shadows, which is hilarious, is a hilarious film.
Oh yeah.
And it's now a TV show that's on FX. But back to Chris Hemsworth, he's saying it's probably the best he's seen. He can't wait to revisit this role. And as you know, with COVID-19, oh God, it sounds like it doesn't even sound like a virus anymore. It sounds like Galactus or Thanos has come and just gave the snap or whatever. But he can't wait to revisit this character because he's saying it's so much more depth than it was for like Thor Ragnarok. And I'm like, oh God, and Thor Ragnarok was amazing.
Thor Ragnarok showed the potential because I've wanted Planet Hawk.
I want more of that. I do.
I want Hawk versus Wolverine. Planet Hawk. But Thor Ragnarok gave us that glimpse of what could be. Because, it's pretty much Thor Ragnarok, but it's also Planet Hawk. Kind of.
Right.
And a small dose of it. Because you had my guy, I'm always forgetting his names. Ant. And I can't remember his name right now.
Who did he play?
He was the Ant. The insect character.
Oh! And Taiki Waititi did actually voice. Good Lord, nah, I'm flagging out.
I want to look for it
but it was funny because he had you have this big rock like character and you're expecting to have this gruff voice, and here he is. He has this New Zealand accent, and it's hilarious. And I'm like, I was not expecting that whole sound.
It was polite,
right? And I'm like, that just gave the whole character a whole nother level. And I'm like, please don't kill this dude off. I need to see that guy. And it's funny to hear and speak about him. So we're moving on to not just Thor, but the moving up of all the films. As many people know, COVID-19 has pretty much caused everything to come to a full stop. And
oh my God, it's just
I've affectionately come to know it as Thanos was right, because there's stuff happening
he didn't even know he snapped.
Right, I'm like, this happened and stuff is going on and people are not showing up and wildlife is teeming again and
like whales were in New York.
Like you have jellyfish showing up in Venice, Italy, and the water is clear, and I'm like, things are happening. I'm like, maybe he was right. I don't know. But as you know, it canceled a lot of stuff. A lot of conventions was canceled. A lot of businesses are shut down. When this blows over, and I hope it's soon, I'm waiting to see how this all turns out. But it has caused on the entertainment front, on the movie front, and film and television front. Well, yeah, television front too. It's
Yeah,
caused a lot to be moved back or moved up. In the case of the Marvel films, it's been a big shuffle. Black Widow was originally supposed to come out this in May. It was
yeah.
supposed to come out at the beginning of May. Actually, what May? Matter of fact, I think it was supposed to come out this weekend.
I believe so.
If it wasn't this weekend, it was next weekend because I know they teamed
May
it in.
1st.
Yeah, so they
So
yeah,
the
it was.
30th.
So they
So
would
the
they was
30th.
teaming it in league with the first. It was going to be in league with Free Comic Book Day, which is always the first weekend of May, which would have been next weekend. So yeah,
Yeah.
it would have been coming out next
The
week,
30th.
but they moved its date back to November 3rd, I do believe. And what's crazy about that release is they moved it back to November 3rd. That caused it was what's the other Marvel film? The Eternals. The
Yeah.
Eternals was supposed to come out November 3rd, but that's moved them back to the beginning of next year, which has caused everything got shifted. And it just pushed everything back. So it took its dates. As far as the television front, we haven't heard too much besides the fact that they've obviously stopped production, like on Falcon and Winter Soldier, which I'm really much looking forward to. But it moved Eternals back to the beginning of the year the beginning of next year. Thor: Love and Thunder was supposed to be November 5th of next year. Now it's been moved to February of 2022, and it's just caused a whole shift. So here it is. Here's the dates. Black Widow is now coming out November 6th of 2020. The Eternals is coming out February 12th of 2021. Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings is coming out May 7th. The third Spider-Man movie has actually been moved back to November 5th of next year. Thor is February 11th of 2022. Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness is March 25th, 2022. Black Panther seems to still kept its date, which is May 6th of 2022. Captain Marvel 2 is July 8th of 2022. And then another untitled movie, which is October 7th of 2022. And my guess for that one is possibly Guardians.
Guardians, that's going to be... I got Guardians of the Galaxy 3 or the Blade.
Yeah, it's one of those two. That was going to be my second guess. Those two. But it's a safe bet. Don't worry, Marvel fans, and I'm one of them. We still get plenty of Marvel this year.
Oh yeah.
They obviously might be done with WandaVision, so we still supposed to get that this year. They might be pushing back the date for for Falcon and Winter Soldier, and let's face it, Falcon is Captain America at this point, just like he was in the books. But for
WandaVision is in December.
Yeah. So they still might be safe then. They still might be safe. We only getting one Marvel movie this year. That's weird. We get one Marvel movie, but they ramp it up, because then the following year you get three
6
Marvels, and then like the following year after that you get 5. So like they're back to saturating the market again. I'm like, we're about to get this money back. Speaking of getting the money back, Disney, thanks to pretty much every film they've dropped last year, made like $20 billion.
Yeah, they dropped Onward on there.
Yeah, like they killed the game majorly, and I'm all for it.
I like Disney Plus because I can still go see Endgame. They have that on there. I went back and watched that a week or two ago, just because I was like, I seen it in the theater when it first dropped.
Mm-hmm.
So I seen it again. I think it was like a month later. I went back and watched it, and every time I watch it, it's like new to me. And especially with everything going on right now, it's like, is this how we got to get back? Like, we got to travel back in the past and find COVID and cut its head off? Because, like, I feel like
We gotta go back and get the stones. We gotta we gotta straighten this all out.
Don't talk to yourself.
Right.
Don't do anything you hadn't done in the past other than Cap, who kind of just like, I'm going to live my life in these 5 seconds.
Hey, look, he put in his work for 70 years. I felt like he deserved some R&R.
That man crammed 70 years into 5 seconds like nobody I've ever seen.
Like he got his girl, he married his girl, he got it in. He was like, look, I live.
He went back and had that dance. He got to see World Series. He got a girl, a house, and a picket fence. He lived the American dream. All of Thanos died. Like, he really lived life.
Yeah. Like he said, like he took Tony's advice. He said, I'm gonna go back and get some of that life out he was always talking about. Yeah.
Like everybody keep talking about, y'all do stuff. Y'all leave here and do stuff after we get that beating up people.
Right. And then here's another piece of info that 2022. So actually their untitled film could be Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse sequel, because theirs is actually coming out October 2022. But see, that's under Sony still.
Yeah.
But they still work in league with Marvel.
Morbius, where's that at?
That could be see, now the numbers have gone up. The numbers have gone up. So it's like
Venom, let there be Venom, let there be Carnage.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah. That was a great teaser. I was like, that was a great teaser. I'm like, oh yeah, because it's Woody Harrelson is playing Carnage, and this is gonna be fun to see that. Here's the thing about that Venom film. It made, I think, $800 million. It might have met the $1 billion mark, but for a film of its stature, it made $800 million, and it did great. And it's a watchable film, and it's actually one of Stan Lee's last moments on film. I think that was the year. Yeah. Like every film that came out that year, it was like one of his last few performances.
I think it was that. Now I think the last one might have been Captain Marvel.
His last live action was Captain Marvel. His last voice work was Into the Spider-Verse. His last voice. So there was a lot going on there. Man, we've gone through so much for that. It was DC's been talking about their distribution problems. Distribution. So here's the story. Like, once again, quarantined, everything shut down, COVID-19, the enemy, the Thanos we didn't know we actually had. Where are the heroes? Anyway, right. So they have Diamond Distribution is the company that helps distribute all the comics for all the companies or all the bookstores around the country. Well, obviously they, because they wanted to play it safe, not sure how this virus lives on stuff and everything else, they stopped distribution. They wanted to play it safe, and I don't blame them, but at the same time I do. Because, there's a lot of places that, depend on them and their product, to come out to them. So there was DC Comics decided they were going to try to go a different route. They were going to go from these two other distribution companies to see if they can make this work. There was a lot of backlash about that. There's, not a lot of people are happy with this, and it makes it a little rough for them. And I can understand why, because you have to build like a fan or a customer base with your product, and when you're the main one, basically, it's just like if Apple decided to just fold, and you have millions of people who has an Apple iPhone or Apple product somewhere.
Go back up.
You like, well, something happened, like your Apple store shut down. Well, guess what? Your phone's crap now because you can't do anything. So this is kind of the same thing with Diamond Distribution. They're they've decided to reestablish their distribution to come out to mid to late May. As like I called it earlier. after suspending their operations at the beginning of the month due to the coronavirus epidemic. So you have a lot of companies who are looking at these two new regional distributors called Lunar and UCS and digital platforms. Now, I'm not a digital person as far as comics. I'm one of those guys. I prefer to have my stuff in
Old
my
school.
hand, you know.
Yeah.
And they're expecting a lot of other people to come in and say, "Hey, we'll go with you guys." But there's a lot of, like, my bookstore is like, no, like bookstore I go to, Carolyn Johns. That's a free shout out, John Dudas.
Shameless plug.
Shameless plug. Carolyn Johns and Cam's Corners in Lakewood, Ohio. Check them out. But they were like, no, we're not going to do that. We're not going to go that route because, you know, we've got this thing going. And it was like, you don't kind of mess with a good thing. And I don't blame them, you know, like,
No.
But then you have smaller businesses because Carolyn John's been in business for like 30 years. So they're kind of what we call Cleveland rich. You know, they got a good standing, you know, which is almost, you know, which is very much unheard of for any brick and mortar comic book store. But
nowadays.
Exactly, nowadays. And so I kind of understand that owner's perspective, saying like, we're not going to change that up. You know, the formula we're doing is fine. We can stay afloat, but as far as the other guy, he can't speak for. I don't blame him. They got to do what they got to do. It depends, though. It really all depends. Like the success of another distributor. Can they be on time? Are they going to offer as much incentive? It's a whole umbrella of stuff that happens that they have to figure out. So that drama is waiting to be seen. May will be here next week. We'll have just 2 more weeks before we find out
what's going on.
Yeah, what's going on? How this is going to play out? And
I haven't read a comic in a while, and I used to read them all the time. I got started with Superman. That was my introduction to superhero dumb back in the 80s with Superman, Wolverine. So I'm kind of old school in that way too. If I'm going to read a book, I don't really want to read it on my phone or an iPad or computer because you can't get to turn another page. It don't feel real.
Right.
Like, there's so much, and if that fails, then what? I got a dead phone, dead iPad. I got nothing. I can't do anything with it.
Right.
Me, myself, I don't know how that would work because I know people do their audio books. And if they do an audio book, who's going to voice it? Are they going to do the characters right? Are they going to get the Joker's laugh right? Because if you do a Joker laugh and it's not right, I'm turning it off. I take that now.
Right.
That's deep on point. You scans like, ha ha ha, I'm Joker. I want the laugh.
Right.
To be the laugh. I want Batman to sound grizzled, like an old detective who's like 3 days away from retirement. And he just don't know what he want to do, and he's constipated all the time. Batman sounds happy. It's just not the same.
Right.
So for me, I like doing the voices when I'm reading something. So it just has to be done right. It can be done because we do live in that age where millennials and everybody else everything's on the go. I want it now. I don't want to go to a store and get it. If you can just beam it to me, then I'll be cool. So you have those people, then you have old school people who love going to that bookstore and interacting with those people, being around other comic book fans and being able to talk about the latest issue they read and recommend what's good. And that is the interaction. For me, I think it's more of the interaction with other people who are like-minded. That is one of the reasons people shop at stores like that.
Mm-hmm.
Because the product can be you can get a comic book from anywhere. Yeah, it's going to be good, but some of those places do special events and things like that. So it's the atmosphere that has changed now.
Right.
I think that's the biggest thing that this whole pandemic has shown is atmosphere has changed. And it's just not the same. You don't get to interact with those people like you do face to face and being able to see the joy in their eye when they're, sitting there reading and, oh man, check this out. This is a good book. I recommend it. So it can be done, but will it be the same emotion with it is what I think would be the biggest question for me. Just being able to see, like, going into a minimum biggest store for sports. I mean, it just ain't the same as buying it online because you don't feel authentic, and that's what I think the biggest part of it would be. I mean, and then with them being so new, will they be trusted? Can they, like you said, can they deliver on time? If I need my books by May 1st and they're not giving them people till May 5th, you got to make it be looked at as a business.
Right.
I promise my people on time. They're used to having this on time, when they need it. I think that'd be the biggest challenge. Them being new and them being able to stand and deliver what Diamond was delivering.
Yeah. In related news to pushbacks and reschedules, when are we going to get Supernatural's last few couple episodes? Good Lord, it's already the last season. We don't have to.
They stopped that, didn't they?
Yeah, daggone virus stopped everything. We just got a new Flash episode last week. We should get another one next week. I think the only shows, as far as the Arrowverse, that have not been affected is Black Lightning, because they finished their season already before this all kicked off. Yeah. Arrow and DC Legends of Tomorrow, which still is dropping new episodes. They said they're good until almost the end of May, which is probably their season finale anyway, Yeah. As far as everything else, as far as Flash, Batwoman, Supergirl, Supernatural, Walking Dead, if people are still watching it, but
they're still out there.
Yeah, they're still out there, but like their shows won't end till later in the year, which is crazy because
now you're cutting into other shows.
You might get something during the summer, I don't know, but there's one plus side to that. Yeah, you gotta wait to see the rest of the episodes, but after you see those last few episodes, your wait for the new season isn't as long, and it's still fresh in your mind. So there's a give and take. Yeah. So
I don't like when shows go, because Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was 2 years. The last episode was what, almost 2 years ago now?
God, has it been 2 years? Lord,
almost. I think they ended in 18, I believe. And it was like this with Smallville. Like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Smallville was 2 shows I watched religiously when they came on. And I'm still with Smallville. But Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., I believe it's been, oh man.
It might have been a minute. I'm not sure. I'd have to check that out. When their last episode was. Good Lord. But, heck, we'll get into the meat and potatoes of the main core of what we're going to talk about right after this little break. Welcome back. This is your host, Chris G. This is Blerd's Eyeview podcast issue number 3017. Who's counting anymore, because we're all stuck indoors. Once again,
no content here, baby.
Like we're all gonna look like the characters from WALL-E in a minute. So for the second voice that you're hearing on this podcast, here's our new co-host.
I am still here. I haven't got fired yet, so I must be doing something right.
That's Darius. He's
our sports guy now. A Blerd, because I am missing out on sports. So I went back to my roots. I went back to watch a comic book movie. Full disclosure, I do have Dustin Clean playing in front of me. It was on TNT, and I cannot stop watching it, even though it wasn't what I thought it was going to be.
It's the train wreck that we can all watch and can't turn away from, I'll admit.
Yeah, it wasn't what we was promised when they came out with Return of Superman, but I won't get into that movie because that's spilled. Nobody wants to hear my 55 cents on that trash. Oh my God, Superman! They did him so dirty in that movie.
Which one in Justice League?
Oh, Superman Returns with Brandon Roth.
Oh.
That train.
And the thing was, Brandon Roth was amazing. That's the thing. He was actually good.
But he wasn't played in the right light.
Right. This is a nice segue. It took Crisis of Infinite Earths to show the Superman we all needed and wanted, and that fixed everything. So,
Yeah.
if you're not paying attention, people, this episode is about crossovers. And
I was some crossover.
crossovers and the stories we've seen in comics over the years and what we've seen in the television and film industry and what they've offered us. So, here's a little list I've made, and we can kind of go off of what we've seen. The movies we've seen that were supposed to be major impacts and major crossovers. We'll start it off with the Dark Phoenix saga, which has been done twice already. So,
Yeah.
through Fox Studios, no longer Fox Studios, it is now, or 21st Century Fox, is now known as, they're now known as 21st Century, thanks to Disney. The House of Mouse bought them out finally this year, if you hadn't been paying attention. So we're going to get our mutants all under one roof again. Yeah, the Dark Phoenix saga. The first time it was done, it was what, in the late 90s, early 2000.
Early 2000.
Hugh Jackman was still Wolverine at the time. Famke Jensen was Jean Grey. James Marsters was Cyclops. That was X-Men 3. And they really, for a film to have as many mutants in it, they really shoehorned a lot into it, and I really didn't like that. It just,
it's kind of all over the place.
It was really all over the place. It was too much. I think the best we got out of it is, I'm the Juggernaut, bitch. I was it was the best we got out of that film.
But that wasn't even the best Juggernaut.
It wasn't the best Juggernaut.
The best Juggernaut was in Deadpool 2.
It did, exactly. Who is played, or at least who's voiced by Ryan Reynolds. So, so that was the first Dark Phoenix saga. When it was done again, it was with the First Class, which are the younger versions of the mutants. What is her name? She's married to one of the Jonas brothers now, but she was one of the oldest Stark sister. She's playing Jean Grey now. I'm crapping with names today.
I'm hitting missing here, man.
I am crapping names today.
The people who make these movies gonna be like, these guys do not know our names. We gotta put their names in gold now.
Put them in gold. Like it was this latest one that they just released. I own it. I own it on DVD because here it is. With Michael Fassbender and James McAvoy, great Magneto, great Professor X. Honestly, really, Nicholas Hoult actually did a really good job as Beast. Great
I like that
job.
Beast better than in one of the original series of movies.
Yeah,
that Beast in the new class, he had more depth to him. It wasn't just like stuffy.
Yeah.
Like Beast that we seen in the cartoon.
Yeah, I mean, and that was fine. Like with Kelsey Grammer, that was fine because he played the stuffy role good, but he's not an action guy. So
no. He was a politician in that role.
Yeah. And
he retired.
The First Class, here's my thing with all the First Class students, because that's how they're known to me now. The latest Dark Phoenix film, there's a scene that really stands out, and it's the train scene. And I don't know if you've seen that, but
I've seen bits and pieces of it.
The train scene that basically all of them are caught. They're all caught. Magneto, Nightcrawler, all of them. Jean is being held captive. They got her sedated. She's held captive. I can't remember how they got loose. But the aliens that they're fighting, they're shape-shifting aliens, but it's not the Skrulls. It's some other race of aliens. Because, mind you, this came out at a time where Captain Marvel had just dropped. Spider-Man Far From Home just dropped. You seen the Skrulls mentioned in these films, so at the time, the X-Men franchise wasn't under the Marvel imprint or Marvel Disney imprint, film imprint.
Oh, that was afterwards.
Yeah, and so they couldn't use the name Skrull because guess what? Marvel's already using it. They can't use that name, so they used another race of alien, and I'm like, oh, that's who they were supposed to be, but really they're not, in whatever. So they kind of gave you a dry explanation about the Phoenix Force, but fast forward to the train scene, which is possibly the most standout action scene I've seen Magneto do. When I say badass, Michael Fassbender, to me, will be Magneto.
Oh yeah, he definitely played that role.
He played that role, and I'm like, just like when Disney bought Fox, and the only person to keep his job was Ryan Reynolds, and I'm like, well, tell James McAvoy and Michael Fassbender they kept their jobs too, because they didn't fail those characters.
They reprised those roles and made them their own, and also made them. Again, they had more depth in the First Class movie.
Right.
It seemed like they gave them more depth, like more free range. It wasn't in the beginning. It was stuffy. It was like Fox was just like, "Hey, we just gonna get these stiffs. We're gonna throw them out here." Other than Hugh Jackman, Halle Berry, to a certain extent, her parts was pretty good.
Yeah.
But the Storm, she was dope.
Yeah.
Like they were all. You see, they had to bring back. Well, they brought back Patrick Stewart. And brought him back from the
Days of Future Past, which we'll touch on in a minute. But
yeah, I mean they were less stuffy, so they gave them more life. So they should be moving forward with those characters.
Yeah, they should. Since we'll stay with the X-Men, we'll talk about we're going to go with Days of Future Past. This one was dealing with the original cast of the X-Men, Halle Berry. Hugh Jackman was always a staying point in that whole camp. Patrick Stewart, James McAvoy, that's when he showed up. Michael Fassbender, that's when he was showing up in it. So they were showing both ends of the whole thing. Days of Future Past, they changed a little bit. They never really did give Kitty Pryde a lot of love.
Poor Kitty, man. She got cut. I didn't even know she had that power, though. I know she could go through walls. I didn't know she could send me back.
They just amped her up, and I'm like, they just kind of changed a lot. It was dark. They showed Bishop. They showed
Bishop was there.
They showed Bishop, but it was so short-lived. And I'm like, you had an opportunity to show us more Bishop, and you didn't. And and you had Blink. You gave us Blink. You gave us characters that people were really looking forward to seeing.
They had a lot of French characters in that movie.
Yeah.
A lot of ones that weren't well known.
Yeah, I think it was you had was it Thunderbolt? No, you had Warpath. You had Warpath.
Warpath was in it.
And you had these characters, and you kind of you tossed them in there. You tossed them in there because when it was found out, you got Bishop, you got Blink. Blink and Bishop were fan favorites, especially Blink.
Bishop was my guy.
Yeah, and you kind of gave them these 5-minute roles. It was that was it. And I'm like, oh man, you kind of crapped them, and it became the Wolverine story, which is what it is. But it was you kind of spent it a little bit on its heels a little bit. But see, that was the introduction also of their version of Quicksilver, which at the time we had already had another Quicksilver in the Marvel Universe films, and we just based it off of how cool they looked. That the Age of Ultron Quicksilver was probably better than the Fox Studios Quicksilver, and it totally.
I like the Fox one.
Yes, it turned out the roles were completely switched around. Like the one in the Fox Studios one, despite the way he dressed, he was awesome.
But I think he was dressed for his time.
He was
back in the 80s.
Yeah, yeah.
His slow scenes were just that.
Those were some great scenes.
His slow down speed.
It showed everything, and that's what I was like, that's what you bank on. That's what you use, and that's how it works.
That's where the money went for that.
Yeah. I'm like,
And
he just saved all they behinds. You know, I was like, oh, that's cool.
the dog and the pizza. And the girl was
I
trying to
can still
seduce
play
him.
that scene and laugh because of everything he's doing. Because that's Quicksilver. He's very brash. He's very obnoxious, and he's just like,
Yeah.
my dude is doing a moonwalk in one scene while he's saving everybody because
Girl
he
was trying to,
has
the dude was trying to
time.
get the kiss.
Yeah, like dude just walks up. He's eating a Twinkie, and he's like, oh, what the hell? This mansion's blowing up. I gotta save everybody.
Yeah.
You know, like this is my first time here. When he's done, he was just like, yeah, I saved everybody. I'm a big deal.
Yeah.
You know, I'm a big deal. You know, so it had some bright spots. Days of Future Past was not horrible. It definitely
No,
had some bright
no.
spots, and Quicksilver scene was one of them. Um,
Yeah.
the other film we've actually seen as a crossover, and it was a slight variation, with Civil War. Um, the Civil
Yeah.
War in the comics was built up a little different. It actually started with the New Warriors, and they had became this reality TV show hero team. They were going around. A lot of the supervillains have basically broken out of the Raft, which is the big
Prison, yeah.
super villain prison that they're held in. There was a breakout earlier in the year in the comics. So the New Warriors, you know, they're the young upstarts, basically. You know, they're a little combination of, they're all heroes in their own right. They all have abilities to one point or another. But they call themselves recording their exploits to kind of grow their fan base, you know, to get more
Let's pull the
recognition.
booster go.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, Booster Gold. Oh my God, yeah. So in one of their exploits, they were going after a villain by the name of Nitro. Now, Nitro had the ability to basically explode. That was his power. Think of him as Bakugan from My Hero Academia. This dude's body could explode and cause these massive explosions. Well, they broke it. They didn't break into it. They were recording it. They were sneaking in, and he spotted them, and this big chase gave foot. It went downhill, and it went downhill fast. During the scuffle, they're fighting, they punching. One of them punches and he flies into like a schoolyard, and he literally kills I believe it was like 355 people, like women, kids. Just it killed a lot of people. This was televised, and this caused the government to say, okay, all the heroes, they got to get registered. They got to be held responsible for the collateral damage. Who's going to pay for this stuff? And this is what caused the civil war between the actual heroes. Because they had to sign their name basically on a dotted line saying, hey, I'm such and such, and this is my real name, and this is who I am. And the government had full access to that. And this is where Tony Stark and Captain America were split on the idea, which is very rare because the government knows who Captain America is. He has no problem. Like, let's face it, the only people he loved are still alive now, and they can take care of themselves. Everybody else he knew is gone. But he felt like your your life is your own. It's a reason why you wear the mask, and it should stay private. And this kicked off a whole big deal because Tony Stark was for the government. He was like, yeah, these kids got to be held responsible. These, all of them got to.
Surprised me.
Yeah.
Like that was surprising that the roles were reversed, because I always see Cap is not really big government, but patriotic. So
he's very patriotic. Very patriotic. He's always what I thought to be what the country should be really founded on. Like, that's the guy we should be following. Like, his whole ideal that everybody talks about, that's him. He's that ideal. He didn't care what race you were. He didn't care what country you came from. He didn't care what your sex was. He was like, look, if it's right, it's right. If it's wrong, it's wrong. There's no in between. Yeah. There's no gray area,
No gray lines. He didn't care.
Yeah, he was like, he didn't see color. He didn't see race. He didn't see none of that. He was just like, look, I'm just fighting I'm helping fight the fight for the little guy. That's who I am. So
yeah, that was his thing. He was always champion. He was the little guy's champion.
Right. So it was so many great stories that came out of that, out of the Civil War camp, because I think two of the ones that stood out the most to me was Peter Parker had just went ahead and sided with Tony because he felt like, if I go ahead and sign up with the government, my Aunt May will be taken care of. I don't have to worry about bills. I'll be able to stay in the mansion with Tony or in the tower with Tony. She'll be able to stay in the tower. She'll be protected. So she thought. And that went south for him real quick. It went south for him. Aunt May's life was put on the line by Kingpin. He sends out his cronies and she's almost dying. And Luke Cage, oh my God, Luke Cage's story was probably the most powerful one because he had already been married to Jessica Jones. They had their baby, Danielle Cage, and everybody knows who Luke Cage is. This is when he was staying in Harlem. Everybody knows who he is.
Oh yeah.
So he doesn't wear a mask, never wore a mask. And here comes the government barreling down on his door. And he told his wife, he said, take the baby, go to Canada, don't watch the news, don't read any newspapers, don't do nothing, just leave. I need you to leave so I know you're protected. And she's like, well, what are you doing? He's like, I'm sitting here in their apartment and I'm gonna let him come. And they gave him till midnight. He's sitting in his chair and Tony Stark and the Shield and all these other government cronies are showing up. And he's like, all right, Luke, you got to come out. You got to sign this thing. And he's like, I'm not signing that. And he was like, well, why not? He gave this diatribe of reasons. And he said, this is just like what my great grandfather used to tell me about happening in the South during the 1800s, and how if you were black and you just moved into this neighborhood, that you had to write your name on this paper and you had to tell them that you was this new Negro in the neighborhood and all this other stuff. He was like, no, I'm not doing that. He's like, this is the same thing. He was like, and the neighborhood was backing Luke. They were throwing bottles and everything else. They were like, hey, man, leave him alone. One, y'all know who he is. Two, he ain't never bothered nobody. And he stood his ground and he fought them off tooth and nail till Cap came and helped him out. Because Cap was running this whole coalition and everything else. Civil War in the books, please go check it out. It was really intense. It was some great stuff.
I'll go back because I like Luke Cage. I want to get into the Netflix series because I know we cross over today. But sooner or later, we got it. We talked about the Luke Cage before, and I've told you my disappointment in the series, especially at the end. For those who haven't seen it, spoiler alert, they screw my man Luke Cage. And not them as in like the people, the showrunners. They kind of turned him into Tony Montana. Like, I just felt, but that's neither here nor there. But back to the Civil War, you had the comic book. I'll touch on the movie because in the movie, the Civil War started because of Sokovia Accords. They wanted to pretty much the same thing, reining superheroes in. They wanted to, hey, you guys got powers. You guys need to work with us. We're the government. We'll send you where we need to send you and where we think you guys need to go so there's no more casualties because they were in Africa and Wanda accidentally killed some people, and that kind of caused also to be part of what happened with the Sokovia Accords. There were people against it, people with it. Of course, Tony Stark, which for the life of me, I've never understood why, as much grief as he gave the government, he wanted to sign.
I don't think it was so much the government he gave grief to. It was some of the politicians he gave grief to. And when you find out later, he was like, oh, he was every right to do so because Gary Shandling was Hydra. So, I mean, it made sense then.
Yeah, we found that out. But it was just, the movie touched on a lot. I mean, you had the introduction of Black Panther. You had Baron Zemo.
Yeah. He'll be making a return. Yeah,
I hope so.
Yeah,
I don't think that story arc wasn't. Because I remember seeing him in the purple and yellow jumpsuit with the purple mask.
Trust me, Captain America. Well, Falcon and Winter Soldier. That's when he'll be in, and we will get the purple mask.
Yeah, man, because I remember the cartoons with him wearing that. But back to the movies. So you have the introduction of Spider-Man. Civil War introduces us to Black Panther, Baron Zemo. You had Agent Ross. You had Spider-Man.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, King T'Chaka, who didn't live long.
Yeah. It shows some things.
Yeah. Um, so you have Bucky, who was framed by Zemo. Spoiler alert if you haven't seen it, I don't care. Too late, people. This is a podcast. We're talking about it.
Yeah.
That's what we So Baron Zemo set up Bucky throughout the whole movie to try to take down the Avengers because Baron Zemo had people in Sokovia who died. So his idea was if I can't kill them, I'll have them kill each other. So he had them kill each other. Hey, I'm in the middle of something. Okay. Dang. Okay, sorry, my daughter. Anyway, my daughter, everybody. So Baron Zemo set up the Avengers. He's used Bucky as a linchpin, kind of. He set him up and elaborately set him up.
Yeah.
Like this had to be a good 2-year plan for this to work out the way it did.
Yeah.
The kid killed T'Chaka and set Black Panther on a warpath to try to kill Bucky.
Mm-hmm.
So you had Wanda on one side, Vision on one side. They had a lot of love, like people who liked each other on the opposite side. And it kind of reminded me of just like, I know Marvel does a lot because back then civil rights, but it reminded me of the people who like wanted voting and didn't want voting. It was kind of like that kind of parallel I drew. It's like on this side, you have people who believe the government is our friend and they're here for us. And on that other end, you had the people who was like, man, the government ain't helping us. They just want to control us and use us. And Baron Zemo was kind of in the middle, just kind of playing, both sides against the fence. Like, I want y'all out of here. So this is what I'm going to do.
Right.
And that airplane fight, that airport fight scene to me had to be one of the best. Not because of the way it was just the action. You had so many different powers. You had Rhodey.
You had the introduction of Giant Man, which I was waiting for. Talk about a scene that was really close to the chest that never got leaked. That was good.
I don't know how that didn't get leaked because that was huge.
That literally, from internet standpoint, that took 2 weeks before that movie was out. 2 weeks before somebody actually leaked it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's called product placement. Good Lord, that was good.
Because you didn't hear anything about it until like you actually either seen it or somebody was just like, you know what, I'm tired of holding this information.
Yeah, that was Civil War is great. We have the night that Gwen Stacy died, which that's not so much of a crossover. It's just one of the best storylines. She dies the same way she does in Amazing Spider-Man 2. Pretty much. And you find out years later that it was kind of Peter's fault. It was kind of Peter's fault, like it wasn't the fall that killed her. It was the sudden stopping of her falling that killed her, and it snapped her neck.
Mass equals broken back and neck.
Yes, it wasn't the Goblin's fault. It was your fault, Pete. Sorry, I love you, Pete, but you dropped the ball on that one. You dropped the ball on that one. We kind of seen the coming of Galactus, and I'm not happy about it. That's a Fantastic Four story. No. I'm like, there's no other way to put that. I am not happy with that particular storyline for the movie anyway.
Not yet.
That was Fantastic Four issue 48 through 50. That actually took several issues, and actually ended at 50. And 2 issues later, Black Panther shows up for the first time. But that's another story. But yeah, it was touched on in 2 venues. It was touched on the 90s in the 90s cartoon Fantastic Four, and in that one you had like Ghost Rider showed up and everybody else.
Yeah,
it was a few people that showed up, but it wasn't nearly.
Spider-Man?
Yeah, Spider-Man. That was a good crossover for the cartoon. The movie version, not so much.
I'm so tired of them rebooting Fantastic Four and still not getting it right.
They'll get it right now. So
Oh,
like they'll
man.
definitely get it right now. But uh, it was just a huge letdown. Silver Surfer was fine.
Oh yeah, the character in the movie was fine.
Yeah,
He
it was completely okay with that. It was just
foreshadowing Galactus was pretty cool, but the movie itself just was garbage.
yeah.
Both times.
So we have that one. We have Daredevil Born Again, which was actually more touched on in the Netflix series. When he what series was it? That was during the Defenders, wasn't it? Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. When it caves in and everything else. But if you watch it at the end, right after the credits, he wakes up.
Yeah.
His mother actually has him, and it was going to be the start of Born Again, and
I was so sad about the Defenders. Like,
yeah,
I wish they took that a little further.
yeah. I think it was just a poor outing, and it was partially because of the Iron Fist character, and it was.
That's another character they just underdeveloped.
Yeah. This is what happens, people, when you hire an actor who doesn't have that much training or you don't give him enough time to train. I don't have a problem with the actor himself. He
was cool.
Yeah.
It was just his fight scenes was garbage.
Yeah. Finn Jones, it's not your fault. They just didn't give you enough fight time. Here is a perfect example. Keanu Reeves had at least almost 2 years. Well, the cast of The Matrix had almost 2 years of martial arts training and gun training and grappling and everything else before they even started filming their fight scenes. This makes a whole lot of difference. It makes it that much more natural. But if you watch
his movements was kind of hanky and jerky. It was like he kind of knew what he was doing, but he didn't. He didn't feel confident. Like he didn't feel confident in doing it.
Yeah. It wasn't until after the first season of Iron Fist, and then after Defenders, and then he shows up in an episode of Luke Cage, which that was awesome. And then by the time his second season of Iron Fist shows up, that was the crossover I was waiting on. The Heroes for Hire.
Heroes for Hire.
That was I watched every episode, and I was fast forwarding through parts just so I could get to that episode.
We had talked about that because I caught on to the Netflix series late.
Yeah.
And then when I was watching it, because I started with Luke Cage, because I liked him in the cartoons, and I wanted to see how they portrayed him in the show.
Yeah.
So his show was amazing.
Yeah.
Soundtrack was great.
Oh God.
The way his character was great. And the actor who played him, and again, I'm sorry with names right now, but he played him so well, and they told the story of Luke Cage in a way that you were like, man, I know him. Like, this is my guy, Luke.
Yeah, like
that episode, the Heroes for Hire episode, which was called something else, but we know that's what it should have been called, Heroes for Hire. That episode showed the potential of Luke Cage and Danny Rand together so well, because they was kind of comedic, and they kind of still didn't. They trust each other more than they did in the Defender series, way more. But it was amazing.
Yeah, that was Luke Coulter. Yeah, Luke Coulter, Mike Coulter. Yeah. I'm sorry, Mike Coulter.
Michael Coulter.
And my cop crush Simone Misnick as Misty Knight.
Oh, Misty, man, they did her. She
fine and dangerous.
Like that first episode, Misty was in the bar. I was like, I don't know who she is, but if she ain't in every episode after this,
there's a problem. Man, so Daredevil Born Again.
Alfred Woodard.
Yeah.
More Misty.
Right. But yeah, Daredevil Born Again, that was a great little callback. I wish they could have really revisited that to kind of build that up some more. The Kree Skrull War, we didn't get a Kree Skrull War. We've gotten a Kree Skrull conflict.
battle.
Yeah.
And
You know, and you only see that in Captain Marvel. You only get bits and pieces of it. I would love for them to revisit it. That's one variation of it. The Infinity Gauntlet saga. We've just seen 10 years of the Infinity Gauntlet saga, and it ended in what can possibly be the most perfect way I've ever seen.
They dropped the mic so well on that movie.
Yeah.
Endgame, again, I still go back and watch it. Hell, I might go watch it after we get done
I
here.
plan on watching it tomorrow. Get off work, I'm watching it tomorrow.
Endgame was the culmination of 10 years of great storytelling.
Right.
And then my scene has to be when everybody comes back. You have all these holes opening. You have about 1 million characters that we haven't even seen yet. You had the Valkyries. You had the Guardians of the Galaxy. You had the Wakandans, the Asgardians. You had Bucky. You had so many characters that are going forward that they just scratched the surface. In 10 years, they were holding back. Actually, if you look
You're
at
talking
it,
about, I see that. Once again, people, spoiler alert. This thing's on Disney Plus, so if you have not watched it yet, I don't know what else to tell you. But when you see the scene where it's Cap, Iron Man, and Thor, and they're facing off with Thanos 3-on-1, and they're holding their own, but they still getting it handed to them, and then Thanos gets to drop on Thor, and that hammer comes up, and you're just like, he about to call it, like, because the first thing I thought was, he forgot that the hammer's over there. He about to call a hammer and knock him. I was half right.
I'm with you. Yeah. Because it was in the theaters, and I thought he called the hammer to him.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh man, I forgot he had the hammer.
Yeah.
He had Stormbreaker. He had Mjolnir. I'm like, okay, he called it to him. And when it went back to Cat, the whole theater.
Yes.
The explosion in the theater was like, okay, this was almost Age of Ultron. He had it.
Yeah.
And Thor was kind of shook. He was like, "Oh, okay."
He was like, he's more worthy than I am.
I thought he was almost worthy. Jealous Thor almost came out.
Yeah.
When he caught that hammer and came back, the explosion in the theater. That's one of the movies I will always remember.
It's the scene.
That scene, the explosion, the jubilation in the theater.
That set the whole tone after that.
Like
that set the whole tone. After he did that,
that point from on, everybody was on the edge of their seat. Like,
and he mastered that hammer with no effort. Like, I'm like, man, he calling lightning too. He did that with no problem. He was just like, all Thor could say was, "I knew it." Wham!
Yeah.
He was more drawn into the fact that he caught it than the fact that he's laying on his back right now.
Yeah, they're on his back like, use that hammer.
He's like, he might be using it better than me. I was like,
the Thor didn't have the stuff Cap did with that hammer.
No, he had his shield. So when he went at him,
oh man.
I think even Thanos was a little shook because he was just like, oh, hold on. Wait, he moving too fast. He doing too much.
Hammer and the shield.
He was like, when he threw the shield and then he threw the hammer at the shield, which caused the sound to knock Thanos down. He calls it back. I was like, this dude's a tactician. That's how you fight.
That is how you fight from now on. Like, you don't fight like that in every movie. So that scene, and then all you hear is, Cap, can you hear me? Cap on your left. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Hold on. And Dr. Strange started opening all these portals opening. Again,
look, the explosion from Cap catching a hammer, and then the explosion from when Black Panther was the first one to walk through that portal.
And I read somewhere that the Russo brothers wanted Black Panther to come out first to kind of signify that everybody was coming back, but they made him because they wanted Bucky to come out first.
Mm-hmm.
Sam.
Yeah.
And it was like we felt Black Panther coming out first would have been more of a shock to everybody.
Yeah. because we just had this moment of 3 months of a character who himself, his own solo film made like $1 billion, and then like almost a year later he dies, and you're like, what the hell just happened?
Yeah.
And so
that was a gut punch when I seen him die.
Yeah, I've read articles where people will say, well, why was he the first to come out? I'm like, you forgot where the last battle was at. It was in his country. It was like, so yeah, that's where, of course, he would be the first one to come back, and then we start having everybody else show up. And whew, that's what, like a half-hour fight scene. That was the most intense. I've never felt that more on edge and happy.
My blood pressure rose for an hour.
Yeah. Like
because he had to lead up to it, and it was just like, even the lead up to that whole fight scene, like the whole movie as a whole was just
you're just hoping. You're just hoping. And
yeah, because the way they told the story is like, we have a chance, but we don't know if it's gonna work.
Right.
And then the whole thing throughout the movie is whatever it takes. That's all we keep hearing. Whatever it takes.
And that was the theme. That was the theme. It said whatever it takes. We got to do whatever it takes. We got to do it. And but when Carol shows up too, like just when they look like they was getting the turn of the tide was going, like, oh man, they're getting hammered. They're getting hammered right now. And then all of a sudden the guns stop. And they flip back the other direction.
Everybody's like, what's going on? Everybody's looking at the sky like, what are they looking at? Like,
yeah, Carol shows up, and I was excited, but my wife was like, yes! And she's not even a comic book fan, but she loves the films and she loves the TV shows. And she was like, yes! And she was like, I knew it. She was like, yes! And I'm like, oh, you ain't alone, baby. So it was...
That was big, because the way she left, before they started going back in time, it's just like
she got to handle business. Like it was the soldier in her, is what it was. It was the soldier in her, and that's all she knew. She was like, I gotta go find out. And she even told them, like she told War Machine, she was like, hey, he was like, where were you at with all, early in the film when he was like, well, where were you at? We all about that superhero life, but where were you at? And she was like, unfortunately, their planets who didn't have you guys to protect them.
That lie.
Oh, when he says we all about that superhero life?
That lie. There's so many lines in that movie.
It is.
That line was just like, it took me back to the streets. This is like, he's like, yeah, I'm out here fighting. He's like, yeah, we all about that superhero life. I mean, we all about that life. What you saying?
Like, but where you been?
Out here fighting. Where you been?
But her retort was so leveled because he couldn't have a comeback after she told him. It was like, she was like, hey, there's planets who didn't have you guys protecting them. Yeah. And all they had was me. And it's just me. Like,
it's 70 y'all and one of me.
Right.
How you feel?
he couldn't even retort after that. It was just like
there was no comeback. That was a good mic drop.
Right. So you got the Infinity Gauntlet saga, which she goes facing people. I'll probably be watching that again tomorrow night. So
I'm gonna watch it tonight.
Yeah, like we'll be going into that. We spoke earlier, and World War Hulk is what I would like to see.
That's what I want.
That's what we've seen pieces of Hulk's story weaved throughout all the Avengers films, but we don't get to see how he got to be what he is at that point. Obviously, him and Bruce came to some kind of agreement.
Yeah, and because we don't get, because we have Professor Hulk.
We had Joe Fixit.
Yeah.
We got Gray Hulk, Savage Hulk.
Savage Hulk. Old Man Hulk. There's so many Hulks, like so many layers to the Hulk.
So many thoughts. so many mind issues he has. So that was all the Marvel crossovers. So we're gonna go over now. I'm not big now. I'm bigger on Marvel than I am DC, but I have a couple.
DC, but Marvel kind of knocked it out the block for 10 years.
They did.
DC
they have. But there's a couple there's a couple standout moments that are pretty good for DC. So one of them is the death of Superman.
Sad.
Yeah.
It's gotta be.
This is the so I'm speaking of the Batman versus Superman film, which has so many flaws. I mean,
That's DC, man.
you know, it's not the Doomsday we deserve.
That Doomsday. Like, I like the Doomsday better that was on Smallville.
Yeah, way better because at least he looked like Doomsday. So
this one looked like a dirty Ninja Turtle without a mask. Like,
exactly, and it was just. Like, you mean to tell me all this time it's just a mutated Zod? It's like, it's not fair. It wasn't fair to people.
No.
They jammed, in Batman versus Superman, they actually jammed, 3 storylines in one film. You had the Batman versus Superman, which is the Dark Knight Returns comic. You have the beginning of the Justice League, which that's a whole book in itself. Then you have the death of Superman. And it's like you've put too much into it, and I remember articles coming out when San Diego Comic-Con first announced it. They were saying stuff like, we have Man of Steel 2 coming out. Okay, perfect. And then literally 2 weeks later, they're like, and it's going to star Batman. I'm like, okay. And it was like, it's going to star Wonder Woman. I was like, okay.
That confused me because I'm like, is this Man of Steel 2 or is it something else? Or
and they kept coming out with more news, and I literally by in 2 months they were saying, oh, and Aquaman's gonna be in it, oh, Cyborg's gonna be in it, oh, Flash. I'm like, well, what are y'all doing, the Justice League? And sure enough, that's what it was. That's what it was, and that's what made they shoehorned too much. I know Zack Snyder had a vision in mind, and it probably looked better on paper.
Probably way better. The storyboard is probably amazing.
Yeah, because see, there's a storyboard that's out even now that the general that's on Man of Steel, that's in Man of Steel, and he shows up I believe he shows up in Batman versus Superman. I can't remember that actor's name. He's always in something. But the storyboard was supposed to say that was supposed to be Martian Manhunter in reality, which would have been a different look. But I'm like, once again, you're shoehorning so many characters in, it was kind of hard. Another storyline that we've seen crossed over for DC in the film world is Batman No Man's Land and Nightfall. Those are 2 storylines in the comics, 2 separate storylines that showed up in one film. That film is The Dark Knight Rises. That's the Christian Bale Batman. That's the Christopher Nolan's directorial Batman. It's not bad. Don't get me wrong. It's not bad. I actually like it. It was just you have Bane, and Bane gets thrown into it, and he breaks Batman's back. So that this is Nightfall right here, but you don't have anybody taking his place. You just have the breakdown of society in Gotham, which ends up becoming No Man's Land. And in the books, No Man's Land was really just this massive earthquake that just pretty much decimated Gotham, and pretty much the government was just like, hey, there's no hope for you guys. We're not going to help you at all. So shut down and figure it out, and it was just kind of like, you kind of jammed not bad, not a bad film. It's no Dark Knight with Heath Ledger. That was.
Oh no, that Joker.
That nailed it. That was a nail. That was a good one. Yeah, for some reason, it's a lot of this. And here's another sidebar. There's a lot of movies that have sequels or threequels, and it's always the second one that's like the best one.
Yeah, that sweet spot.
I don't know what it is.
The first one, they're trying something new, or they're just trying to establish the character. And the third one, they're trying to finish off the character. But that second one, they just let the character just be free.
Yeah.
And Joker in that movie, he stole the movie. Like, that should have just been called Joker.
Right.
And Batman was in it. Because he played that story. The story was good. The Cinematography was good. It had great scenes, and Joker just didn't care. Like that's the Joker I like.
Yeah, yeah. That was the cinematic DC universe. Now, unfortunately, DC has a lot of issues, in my opinion, and I'm probably not alone. There's cinematics beyond Wonder Woman, Aquaman, and Shazam, and even Man of Steel. Could use a lot
That's
of
still
work.
good.
Yeah, I actually like. There's some, and Man of Steel has a split decision on that one because they're just like, oh, he doesn't kill. I'm like, well, you figure if you really paid attention to the Superman character through Man of Steel, Batman versus Superman, and Justice League, it's really his story.
Oh yeah.
It's the first one is him finding out who he is. He's finding himself. The second one is now people are, kind of looking up to almost like a godlike character, and he's trying to figure out how does he accept that role, and he dies. Yeah. The third one is him coming back and really he's the Superman we know. He's balanced. He's balanced now. He's figured it out. He's back from the dead. He knows what's going on. Everything's clear now. He knows what he needs to do. It's really his story, but it was just told in a cinematic way that might have been too much. It was too much going on. It was a lot to digest.
I think Batman versus Superman might have been the busiest of them all because it was.
Yeah.
They're trying to tell the story from two different lenses. It was like Superman's view, and then you had Batman's view from the ground, and him trying to save his workers. And he had Lex Luthor, you let him die, and all this other stuff.
Right.
And thinking of that Lex Luthor, I didn't really like that Lex Luthor.
Not a fan. Sorry, Jesse Eisenberg. Actually, I liked him better at the end of Justice League. That version, that Lex, that Lex I like. Not the rambling Lex.
Yeah, the craziness.
Yeah, I'm like, dude, what's wrong with you? But the Lex that was at the end, the bald Lex that was talking to Deathstroke, I'm like, that's the Lex I know. I like that Lex better.
Yeah.
So it was there was some moments for that one. There was some moments. Now, the television version of crossovers, I don't know what CW got in their pocket.
Yeah, CW was like, you know what? Y'all they keep making them crappy movies, but these shows.
And it all started with Arrow. Arrow, if many don't know, Arrow has officially ended its season. They had a short season, unfortunately. It's not due to the COVID-19 virus or anything. They just had pretty much a half a season, and it sucked, and it was bad, and I wanted more. But out of the Arrowverse was born The Flash, the TV show. Out of The Flash was born, what was it, DC Legends of Tomorrow. Yeah. Out of The Flash was born Supergirl. Out of DC Legends of Tomorrow and Flash and Supergirl combined was born Batwoman. So all of these came from one show, and that was Arrow. Arrow actually literally took the role of Batman, so to speak. He was the Batman of that universe because they couldn't use him.
Yeah.
And right. And one of their first major crossovers, and they've had several of them now. I think they've had about 4 of them now.
Yeah.
Their first major storyline that they used was Flashpoint. And obviously this came from the Flash, and this is where he calls himself going back. He's always trying to save his father. His father didn't die. His father was just in prison for his mother's death, which he did not do.
Reverse Flash.
Right. And he was always trying to prove his innocence, and he had an opportunity to do so by running back in time, stopping Reverse Flash, allowing his mother to live, but it changed the entire timeline throughout the entire Arrowverse. It changed on Arrow. John Diggle and his wife, they had a daughter until Barry went back in time and changed everything. And when he came back, they don't have a daughter anymore. They got a son. It was like that was just one of the changes. You know, it was like, oh, Barry, why? Like when
For a
it,
while, there was those running memes like
yeah,
something would mess up, and they were like, "Ah, shit, Barry, what'd you do now?"
right, right. Like it was like Barry, what did you do? I was like, yeah, but
Who can't making cherry coke no more? Ah, damn, the Flash went back in time.
right. But the latest crossover, which I've gone on record to say has been their most ambitious, is Crisis on Infinite Earths. Um, they've included Black Lightning this season. Oh man,
Brought back Smallville.
they brought back people we didn't they brought back things we forgot about or people we forgot about. They brought back Burt Ward, the original Robin. He wasn't in the Robin costume, of course. He was wearing a V-neck sweater that had the Robin colors. But they show up with him. He says, "Holy crimson, what did he say? Holy crimson skies." And then his world is wiped out. They brought back the Birds of Prey show, where Huntress is talking to Barbara on the intercom. Her world gets wiped out. God, they showed so many worlds getting wiped out. But that told you there was more than one world. Lucifer's world, the show Lucifer, that showed up on there.
Yeah, he's a part of that universe.
Yeah, he's a part of that universe. Right. There was things going on in these 5-part episodes that blew my mind. And when Tom Welling shows up,
that might have been might have been the only clip I've watched because I didn't get the chance to watch it, which I'm trying to look forward to seeing it. Because we had talked about that too.
Yeah.
Tom Welling showing up because I know I read before he thought about reprising the role and what happened to Superman after the show ended. Because for me, like I said, Smallville was one of the first.
It's probably it's a very it's a very funny exchange between him and Lex Luthor. Now the Lex they have, yeah. Now this Lex Luthor is played by John Cryer. Now, I will go on record as saying he's probably one of the best live action actors to play Lex Luthor. Very not what I was expecting from him at all.
I still like Michael Rosenbaum.
He unfortunately he couldn't make it on there.
Yeah,
but
he said he wanted to.
Yeah, he wanted to. I think they didn't reach out to him or for something. I can't remember how that went down, but there's an exchange between Supergirl's Lex Luthor and Smallville's Tom Welling. And it's such a funny exchange because Lex Luthor basically gets the book of time. And he's deciding he's going to go to all these different Earths and wipe out Superman because that's his whole thing. If I kill Superman, I can do what I need to do.
Yeah.
So he goes to this Earth to wipe out the Tom Welling Superman. And he's on the Kent farm. He's working. He's married to Lois. And they have 2 kids. You just see Lois, though. You don't see the 2 kids. And he gets there. He's talking to him. And he was like, "Oh, you must be Lex." And they have this weird exchange. But it's funny because he pretty much tells him, he was like, "Well, I gave up my powers years ago." So Lex is like, "You gave up your powers?" So that kind of like took the fight out of him. And he was like, and they have like this banter, and then that's where that's where Clark says, he was like, "Yeah, I don't miss him. I don't miss him." And like Lex is going on with this rambling and barking and everything. He's like, "Yeah, and I don't miss that neither." You know? and it's such a funny exchange, and it's probably, I'm like I said, John Cryer, if you ever get a chance to listen to the show, you're doing a fantastic job. I love your Lex Luthor. Keep it up. And I was really surprised at how he played that role. Really surprised. Like,
yeah, he played it because like I said, I watched the clip and the exchange was hilarious because I remember one line. He was like, "Yeah, I'm Lex." He's like, "You're not the Lex I know."
Yeah.
And I read a theory that I know if you watch the Smallville series, there was the different kryptonites. You know, you had red kryptonite, the green, and the blue. And I believe there's like a gold or something, but the blue kryptonite strips him of his power.
Right,
And
completely.
there's a theory that either in the watch or his ring there was blue kryptonite, so that's why he didn't have power.
Yeah, yeah. All the it was part of his reasoning was he couldn't live his life as Superman and still live his life being married and having kids because there were always going to be some kind of danger.
Yeah. And they brought back Erica Durance to play.
Who actually plays 2 roles on the entire Arrowverse. She plays Lois Lane in the Smallville Arrowverse world on Crisis, and she actually plays Supergirl's mother on Supergirl. It was another actress that played her, but as of recently, she's been playing her mother. As a matter of fact, everyone who's played Superman almost since the 90s has been on this show.
Yeah, because they had Lois and Clark.
Dean Cain. Dean Cain has been on the show.
That show was very underrated.
It was. It was also fast-tracked, like, near the last season. Because it was around that time in the books where Superman and Lois get married. So it was actually... So by the time their last season, it was fast-tracked that him and Lois get married. And it was like, you're kind of forcing the gun here. You know?
They rushed it.
But yeah, Crisis on Infinite Earths is a fun 5-part crossover. It was like you're talking about, man, I got to get up early in the morning. But
watch.
I'm like, I got to watch this. You know, I get up at 4 in the morning, but I got to watch this. This is good. You know. And that's what it was. That's how it turned out to be. And it really was. It paid off. I mean, there is so much that goes on in that show or in that crossover that you're just like, oh my God, I can't believe they just did that. Oh my God, did that just happen? Oh my God. You know, it was like Kevin Smith does 2 in-cap shows for the crossover. And if you know, Kevin Smith is a big fanboy anyway.
Oh yeah.
And it shows. It really shows. So if you don't get a chance, and this is for you too, D,
I'm going to go watch.
Check. I still have it on my DVR. I'm like, hey, I don't know how long this thing's gonna last, but I'm gonna have it on my DVR for a while.
That one snippet that I seen was like, okay, they brought back Tom Welling. This gotta be huge because at one point he was talking about he'd never go back and play Superman again.
Yeah,
you know,
he didn't wear the suit. And when, like I said earlier, Brandon Routh, he does double duty. He plays Adam on DC Legends,
and then he plays
Kingdom Come Superman. It's the Kingdom Come suit he's wearing.
Yeah,
and here's the thing: the Kingdom Come Superman is the Superman from Superman Returns.
Yeah, I know, but still, we're not gonna bring that movie up.
Yeah,
that movie has to get scratched from the end.
And then if you think about it, he's a lot bigger too. In the shows, he's like a lot more ripped. And you're like, dude, like, okay.
Because in the movie, he looked small.
He was,
and that's another thing I didn't like about it. Like I said, Justice League is playing now, and he's ripped. Like,
Henry Cavill is just ripped. Yeah. That dude's huge. You know, he's just one of those guys. It's just like Ben Affleck playing Batman. It was like, dude, he's already tall and in shape. Yeah. He got bulk for that role, and he actually did a really good job. You know, as Batman, I wanted to see more. You know, but he was grizzled and pissed.
That's the Batman I want.
Yeah, he was grizzled and pissed. He was like, I'm like, I like this guy. You redeemed yourself from your Daredevil role. Thank you, good sir.
Oh, Daredevil. That's another one.
Yeah. Talk about bad films.
That could be a show. Woo. Right.
Well, everybody, this show has been fantastic. It might be split into two episodes. Who knows? I might just run the full thing. But I want to thank everybody for tuning in to Blerd's Eyeview. Chris G,
Darius.
We will be seeing you and listening to you and hoping you listen to us soon. Thank you for tuning in. Blerd's Eye View out.